Triglav. As the Serbs in ancient times lived in vast areas, many of them did not even meet their tribesmen, so there was no complete unity even in beliefs. Certain gods are tied to specific areas and similar or the same properties as some other gods, only with different names. Triglav was one of the gods revered by northern Serbs and in many ways was similar to Svetovid. Triglav was especially celebrated in Poland, in Stettin, where he was considered the main deity, god with 3 heads. Unlike the other gods, who were very large, the statue of Triglav was usually small and all silver-plated. When the Christians baptized the Poles, they sent 3 heads of Triglav to Rome to witness their baptism. Triglav had the role of god of war and with the help of his horse, he divined according to the will of God Triglav and outcome of the war. They did this by placing 9 spears at a distance of 1 cubit each, so they brought Triglav's horse across over those spears, and if the horse did not step on a single spear, they considered that God was favorable to them. Stribog. Stribog was one of the dedicated deities who is considered the Lord of Wind. It is the deity that controls the winds, the currents of winds, after which he got his name. Stribog was also considered the god of the strong winds, such as storms, and god of cold winds in the northern regions. Simargl. Very little is known about this deity, and it appears in the north of Europe. The name of this deity is etymologically unknown, so the question of its origin is completely uncertain. We don't know anything about him other than his name. Some historians have come up with the idea that the god Simargl is the god who chases away the winter, Zimogonya. Mokosha. The name of this goddess is mentioned among the Russians, who give her the role of witch doctor. The Russians gave her the role of protector of women and plains and told how Mokosha spins. If the ship lost part of its wool, they said that Mokosha took it for a spin. At night, they left a strand of wool near the successors as an offering to Mokosha. Mokosha was presented as an ugly phenomenon, a deity of ugliness. Radgost. Radgost was the supreme deity of the city of Retra. The Retrans were Serbs who belonged to the Ljutic tribe and who lived between the rivers Odra and Elba in the Gulf of Libek. Today, the Serbian life has almost been completely disappeared from these areas, with the exception of Lusatian Serbs. Another name for Retra was Radgošće, a name obviously derived from the names of the god Radgost or Radogost. In Radgošće, that is, Retra, there was a temple of this deity built of wood, beautifully painted inside and out. The temple stood on foundations that resembled horns, and many objects were attached to these horn formations that would provide protection to the temple, among other things, of real animal horns. Adam of Bremen describes the statue of Radgost, which was in a temple, as a magnificent structure covered with gold on a purple base. Serbs from other tribes also came to Radgost's temple, which made Retrans very proud. In front of Radgost's temple, trading took place and fortune-telling was performed inside the temple. Divination was performed in the following way. Priests would first drill the holes in the ground, then they would interpret the shapes that the excavated soil would form, and then the green horse would be released into the temple. This horse was a very ordinary horse that was covered with grass for divination purposes. Depending on where the horse would tread, the will of the gods would be interpreted. Radgost's temple was built in 1000 and burned in 1066 by the Catholics. Radgost, like some other Serbian gods, was represented with several heads, therefore he was polycephalous. One of his heads was that of a man, the other that of a lion. Like every Serbian deity, Radgost had warrior attributes. In one of his hands was an axe, and in other bread and salt. What do these attributes tell us? Bread and salt represent a symbol of welcoming in Slavic countries, so we can conclude that Radgost was the god of hospitality, and his name speaks about it. Radgost is the glad guest, that is, a dear guest, a guest whom the host is happy to host. It should be emphasized that hospitality is a well-known characteristic of Serbian peoples, which makes them pleasant and good-natured people who will not deny their guests food or bed, and in some cases the host will even offer his wife. This custom existed among the Scandinavian. This custom also existed among the Scandinavian peoples. During the celebration, the host always tries to please the guest, so there are also cases where the celebrations of Serbs last for days, like Ivkova Slava. Even Radgost's axe was a symbol of hospitality. It was a weapon with which the host would protect his guest even in an event of attack. Apart from being the god of hospitality, Radgost was also the god of joy. He was tied to wine, which is why he was celebrated by winemakers. The aforementioned qualities of Radgost were the reason why this period of the year was dedicated to this deity in which Serbs most often celebrated something. It was the winter period of the year, which is still considered a time of celebration. Regarding the possible planetary correspondence, Spasoje Vasiljev cites a source by which Radgost is identified with Mercury. However, in Slavic tradition there was no astrological system, so all today's systems are planetary correspondences involving Slavic deities are purely arbitrary. And a document cited by Vasiljev, Mater Verborum, was later declared invalid. It remains an open question whether Radgost can be identified with another deity of Petra, Svarozhica. Trojan. Trojan was a mythical being from folklore of the ancient Serbs who was sometimes considered a deity. His cult was linked to the ruins of the castles and fortifications of the Roman Emperor Trajan, which is why it is considered that the Serbian god Trajan was initially only a deified Roman emperor. However, this thesis should not be taken for granted, because Trajan's name is associated with many legends that have nothing to do with Roman Emperor Trajan. There are numerous historical sources that provide us with a knowledge about Serbian god, that is, the demon Trojan. We learn about Trojan from the Christian medieval writings, revelations of Saint Mary of God about hell, and Apocalypse of the Apostles, which declare Trojan, Perun, Horus, and Veles to be false gods, that is, deified historical figures. Trajan is described as a Roman emperor who is a deified, while Perun and Horus are associated with Crete. In addition to numerous monuments dedicated to Roman Emperor Trajan, the territory of former Yugoslavia, we also come across the legends about mythical being named Trojan. Serbs are familiar with a fairy tale about Emperor Trajan, who hid his unusual physical appearance from the people. Namely, he had goat ears that only his barber had seen. We have already mentioned that many researchers believed that Trajan's cult arose based on a belief in a haunting of places that are somehow associated with Roman Emperor Trajan. Researcher Jagic believes that the Slavs gradually began to associate all ruins with Emperor Trajan, which is why he became the demon of ruins, that is, a being that inhabits the remains of former cities and fortifications. In this way, Trajan acquired a status of deity and was considered equal to Perun, Horus, Veles, and other gods mentioned in Apocalypse of the Apostles. The authors of these writings first used the fact about the human origin of the god Trojan, and on the basis of this fact declared all other Slavic gods. However, it should be borne in mind that not all legends about Trajan are connected with the former Roman emperor. His other name, Trojan, suggests that this is an entity whose characteristics are threefold. In Serbian language there is moreover an epithet, Trojan, which precisely means something that is threefold. In Trojan's case, The triplicity is tied for his 3 heads and that caused harm to people and animals.